Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jennifer Pattison Tuohy of The Verge is here, and we talk about the Bloomberg report from Mark Gurman about Apple's expansion into AI robots. Then I talk about the new Pebble Time 2 design reveal before Harrison Sand, a senior security consultant from Mnemonic, talks about how he and the Mnemonic team tracked down the person behind those global SMS scams, and round things out with an update from Apple on Blood Oyxgen sensing via the iPhone instead of the Apple Watch. Tune in to this week's episode of Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 400, with Jennifer Pattison Tuohy and me, Mikah Sargent. Recorded Thursday, August 14th, 2025. How security experts hacked the hackers. Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking that tech news. I am your host, Mikah Sargent, and I am joined this week by Jennifer Pattison Tuohy of The Verge and The Verge Cast. Hello, Jen.
Hi, Mikah. Happy to be here as always. Nice that there's not such a big gap this time.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of going, I feel like it's been forever since I've seen you, I go, oh, it's nice to see you again. Yes. So for people who are tuning in for the first time or who need a little reminder, this, of course, is the part of the show where we share our stories of the week. These are stories that we find interesting, or in some cases kind of late breaking, as is the case here. And I'm really excited to hear your excitement or lack thereof, you tell me, about this story that you've chosen.
Yeah. So it's funny. I was just saying to Micah, happy to come on, but I don't really have much to talk about. And then boom, Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, as he's wont to do, just spilled all this exciting Apple Home robot Siri stuff. And I was like, oh, look, I want to talk about this. This is exciting for me. This is, very much in my space. But basically, just to sort of summarize, it's a very long article, lots and lots of things to dive into. But I think probably there's three things that I'm most excited about. The first is a lot more juicy detail on the new tabletop robot that Apple has been rumored to have been working on for a while. It's now got a potential date, which is exciting, 2027, I think. So it's not soon.
A while.
But it's going to, what really struck me about this, so the way he describes it is that the new tabletop robot resembles an iPad mounted on a movable limb that can swivel and reposition itself to follow users in a room. Like a human head, it can turn toward a person who is speaking or summoning it, and even seek to draw the attention of someone not facing it. So this is going to be, sounds like a very sort of interactive device. They're saying it's going to be, a key function will be FaceTime calls, video conferencing, the display will shift. And that's something we've already seen with Echo Show devices. They have a shifting display. But it's the kind of interesting part here is that it's going to have a personality. They say the quote is, the tabletop robot will serve as a virtual companion. It could even interrupt conversations between friends about dinner plans and suggest nearby restaurants or relevant recipes. Really doesn't sound like something I would want.
That sounds
exactly.
like a great idea. I love
but again,
that.
That's the kind of this is a personality in your home, not just a tool, which is something I have very mixed feelings about. But they're also going to have it be, that there was a comment in there that it may look a little bit like a sort of animated Clippy. They were one of the things they were talking about using was the Finder icon as a little face. So I love the idea of Apple using a Clippy style. This just feels like a complete circle here, a Clippy style robot. But all of this obviously is rumor. None of it's been fully confirmed. And that is very much in the future. But there was more reporting here about the actual smart display that we've heard more about recently coming next spring, getting a much more sort of definitive timeline. And all of this is going to be powered by this new LLM Siri. And one of the key kind of nuggets in this story was that Apple, as Amazon had to do, is sort of stripping away the old Siri and building a whole new Siri. And this sort of has been the theme we've started to see with the transition from the command and control voice assistant to the LLM-powered generative AI voice assistant. And that kind of goes towards this idea of having a more human-like companion robot in your home, which, again, I have thoughts on. But just before we get to any thoughts, the other thing that came out of this is more information about potential Apple smart home products outside of smart displays, more details about cameras and potential video doorbell, which was exciting. And also a sort of a hint that maybe Apple may be developing a home security system. Gurman writes that the security system, which could include the cameras, when people say a security system, they don't necessarily mean like a keypad and contact sensors on the door, but the security system will be able to automate household functions. So it would actually also act like sensors. So you'd be using the camera and infrared sensors, he says, to sort of help determine who's in the house and what's happening. He did say that these cameras will be battery powered, which I thought was very interesting because that's not normally something you would use inside a home, saying that they could last from several months to a year on a single charge, which I'm like, nope. There are no battery powered cameras that do that. So I'd be very interested to see if they manage that.
If it doesn't, if the camera doesn't turn on, then it'll last a year.
Absolutely not helpful. And then it'll also have facial recognition. So again, they'd be able to kind of respond to who's in the home, and also as a security system, if someone who shouldn't be in the home is in the home. So a lot of sort of really interesting things. There was also a lot of detail about new software, Home OS type. Well, not Home OS. It was actually a new operating system that's going to come to these robot smart displays called Charismatic, and that it would actually adapt based on who is looking at it, which means it will be potentially one of the first Apple products that's multi-user,
Truly
which is
multi-user,
exciting. Truly multi-user. I mean, obviously HomePods have that a little bit, but So that's sort of a really brief summary. You highly recommend people reading the whole thing if you have the Bloomberg subscription or can find your way around the paywall, because there's a lot of juicy details, and it was very exciting. What grabbed you, Mikah?
Well, the one thing that you talk about there is the change, right, in interaction based on the user. Yeah. And it made me kind of think about how my significant other, I'm not sure what your experience is, but mine is particularly allergic to when technology is trying to be clever. And it's sort of like, don't do that. Just do what I need you to do. Yeah. Whereas I find some of that quirkiness kind of adorable. A great example of this is just the other day, I was in the kitchen, I think cooking, I don't remember, it doesn't really matter, but I said to the HomePod Mini that was in the kitchen, turn the volume to 100, because if you've had a HomePod Mini, they're not very loud. And so I said, turn the volume to 100, and it responded. It said, "Are you sure? That's pretty loud." And I said, "Yes." And I had a little chuckle at that, as you just did. But when I explained that to my significant other, he was sort of put off by the idea that it would, ask that instead of just doing what I asked it to do. So I had this thought of, when I walk up to this thing, it's, moving its head back and forth and sort of, nodding along or whatever and following me. And then if he were to walk in the room, the thing would just go into this mode of just only doing what it's told to do. Exactly. Whatever you say. And how different that could be. Because I think that kind of thing can be delightful, and I enjoy that aspect of it. But I do wonder, the one thing that kind of made me go, I made all of those noises, was the idea that it would cut in to a conversation I'm having.
That was the first thing I picked up. I'm like, interrupt? I don't want a device to interrupt me. I want when I say, what do you think, maybe S or A,
Yeah, if
do
I
you
bring
have
you
any
in, yeah.
suggestions? But don't interrupt me. I mean, to be fair, that did look like that was kind of the context that the reporter added rather than like a
Right.
direct quote from someone. But yeah, that it just stuck me, because when you have any kind of a technology device in your home that interrupts you, like Amazon's A does that a lot by mistake because it thinks it hears its wake word. And it's so frustrating. It's like, shush.
Yeah. Yeah. You be quiet. I'm not talking to you.
But
and that I think is that the problem with that too, that I have seen, is people are already convinced, as we've talked about before, that their devices are constantly listening to them.
Yeah.
So the idea that one would interrupt to say,
means they are listening.
Yeah, they are listening. Oh, I hear that right now you're talking about going to a restaurant. So let me, but then I think maybe the people who have that distaste or dislike would not have this in their home in the first place. That this would, but I mean, who is it for then, if anecdotally speaking, but largely speaking in the anecdotal situations, people who I see who are not us, these tech enthusiasts, don't seem to like that. So it does make me wonder, is it just a matter of the right company doing it, which I think is what some would argue, particularly Apple enthusiasts would argue.
Versus Amazon.
Or is it that this would be a product for people who are super into this in the first place? I don't know, I don't know the customer base of the HomePod Mini, for example. I know, I would imagine that a lot more people have Apple TVs than have HomePod Minis, but I could be wrong about that. And so it makes me, and the HomePod, I'm using the HomePod Mini as an example because it is sort of what Apple offers as a smart home, quote unquote, product, even though it's not really, but it does have the little humidity and temperature sensor built into it. And it does serve as, the device for helping communicate with your other smart home stuff. Interesting.
I think it's going to be really down to what that functionality it can offer is. Like, I don't think interrupting me to tell me I might want to go to this restaurant is good function. But if it's going to interrupt me to say, oh, you left your garage door open, would you like me to shut it? Or if it can have context from around the rest of the home, and be able to do helpful, useful things, be able to help manage your home. I mean, we've talked about the idea of these robots being kind of the brain of your home. I mean, robot is a loose term, because this isn't like a Rosie that's going to roam around your home. It's just sort of sitting on a tabletop. It's just the next step up from a smart speaker, having more personality and some mobility. I mean, in fact, I think we talked about this a few episodes ago. Apple had released a sort of a white paper about tabletop robot that looks like the Pixar lamp.
Yes.
And I think that obviously seems to be what they've connected to here. I think there is a fine line between personality, charm and endearing, and annoyance. And that is going to have to be, that fine line is really ruled by functionality. If you're doing something useful and productive for me, I'm going to put up with that a little more, even if I'm like your spouse and don't like it. Mine is the same. Like, we're testing Alexa Plus at the moment, and whenever you ask it things that you used to ask it to do, it now adds a little kicky line at the end all the time, and everyone in my house is like, woo.
Why is it doing that?
It's like when I ask what the weather is, it'll tell me, and then it'll say, sounds like it's going to be a good one today.
Oh boy. Yeah. And so, we've gotten used to the other way of it doing things too. And so sometimes I think it might be just a matter of adapting to a change, and
we'll need to be able to dial up and down the personality, I think, based on what you like.
Yeah. I think that works. There's a weather app, Carrot Weather, and it has different personality modes that you can choose for it. And I think that, that was something that I always found delightful about it, where you could say, I really just want to know the weather. Don't do any clever messages or anything like that. Or I want you to say some wild stuff when you're talking about the weather, and that's good too. But it's your choice. And maybe that's the aspect of it that's important, is the person gets to make a choice on how they have theirs set up.
Yeah. Yeah. And, choice if they want a kind of AI robot companion in their home, or if they just want something that's going to set a timer and play music. Because I think you still, the utility is the important part. I mean, there's a lot of interesting work being done, I think, on that companion side. And I think we'll see a lot of that coming in the future, but I feel like there isn't the demand for it yet. So I think once it's out there, the reaction will be interesting to sort of see whether people really enjoy this and whether it brings more to their life, especially people that live alone. I know people that use Amazon's A as a companion already, because it is, the loneliness is a real thing.
Yes.
But whether artificial intelligence is the solution to that sort of gets into a real psychological. What's the word for society?
Oh goodness, which one?
You know what I'm trying to say.
I do.
Something.
It is a big question,
societal
right?
question for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, let us take a quick break. A reminder again to definitely go and check out that Bloomberg article, as it has loads more detail and interesting aspects. It's one of Gurman's longer pieces, and is filled with lots of good stuff. But we'll take a quick break and come back.
Sociology, that's what I was trying to say. Sorry.
Sociology. There we go.
Sorry.
There's
it came
the word.
To me eventually.
We got around to it. Your A said, I heard you were talking, and I think the word you're looking for is
here's
sociology.
The word you need. Okay, I can deal with that. Thank you. You're helpful. No, it did not.
All right, we'll take a quick break and come back with my story of the week. I want to tell you about ZocDoc, bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. So, remember that doctor's appointment you were supposed to make a while ago? That one you meant to book and completely forgot about until now? Perhaps it's that dentist appointment for your biannual cleaning, that overdue annual checkup that instead of being annual has been 3 years in the making, or the dermatologist visit for that mole you keep meaning to get looked at, or the rash you diagnosed with Google but still haven't had checked out. Why not go and book it today? With ZocDoc, it makes it easy to find the right doctor right now. And it's all online for those of you who hate calling. You might even be able to book an appointment before the end of this ad read. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. With ZocDoc, you can book in-network appointments with more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, primary care to urgent care, and more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, and are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and are highly rated by verified patients. Once you find the right doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit. I mentioned before, when I first moved to Portland and had to switch insurance, ZocDoc very much came in handy for finding doctors that were within my plan. And I ended up finding a doctor within walking distance from my house, and then a dentist within walking distance from my house, that all took my insurance. It was incredibly helpful. And for those of you who, are continuing to look for new doctors of different types, this is so great for that. Appointments made through ZocDoc happen fast, typically within 24 to 72 hours of booking. More often than not, you can even get same-day appointments. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/TNW to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/TNW. ZocDoc.com/TNW. Thank you, ZocDoc, for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, back from the break, joined this week by Jennifer Pattison Tuohy, and it's time to talk about a smartwatch, the Pebble smartwatch, which is making a comeback, and its creator, Eric Migicovsky, has just revealed the final design for the Pebble Time 2. After successfully recovering the Pebble trademark, Migicovsky's company Core Devices is bringing back the beloved smartwatch brand with RGB LED backlight, more significant upgrades, including a stainless steel construction, and an impressive 30-day battery life estimate. The watch, which is available for pre-order at $225, represents a refined evolution of the original Pebble Time design, this time with modern features like heart rate monitoring, dual microphones, while maintaining that delightful e-paper display that made Pebble famous. So let's talk about the kind of resurrection story. Eric Migicovsky, who we've had on the show before, is the original creator of Pebble, and remember back then a Kickstarter project, announced plans to return to the smartwatch market in March of 2024 through Core Devices. Now, as we talked about on the show, the watches were originally branded as Core 2 Duo and Core Time 2, because of the fact that they didn't have the ability to call them Pebble due to the trademark issue. But Migicovsky has since successfully regained that Pebble trademark, and therefore the watches will change from being called the Core 2 Duo to the Pebble 2 Duo, and the Core Time 2 to the Pebble Time 2. So what's changed? Well, the final design offers, it's I think, quite a bit of a change from what we originally saw in those preliminary versions that Migicovsky showed in March. They've been able to tweak and improve the industrial design quite a bit since then, says Migicovsky. I think it's turned out fantastically well. Even has a working engineering sample that he's been wearing. Of course, the final quality and finish is not there yet because the company is asking for feedback. But what can we expect from this new hardware? Multicolor RGB LED backlight so that you get better visibility. And with that e-ink display, that RGB LED backlight is helpful. A second microphone, so that can be used for environmental noise cancellation when you're talking into it. Compass sensor for navigation features. Screw-mounted back cover for durability, but also fixability. Stainless steel construction for the front and the back. And stainless steel buttons that are similar to that Pebble Time steel of yesteryear. The display is a 1.5-inch 64-color e-paper display. It's got touchscreen functionality and hardened glass lens. Interestingly, I think for this product, a 30-day estimated battery life, which in the smartwatch market is pretty wild. Yeah, where are you going to find that? And a quick release 22 millimeter watch strap as well. One last thing I'll say before we kind of chat about this a little bit. It's currently available for pre-order at $225. According to Migicovsky, the company plans to release the watch in 4 colorways. Those 4 colorways haven't been finalized, as they are looking to hear from everyone about the colors. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I imagine it's a little difficult to break into the smartwatch market at this time. But I think Pebble is uniquely positioned in the sense that it has quite the enthusiastic fan base. And that 30-day battery life could really speak to some people. What do you think?
Well, it's the original smartwatch. I remember always wanting a Pebble. I didn't get one, but when they first came out, and they definitely have that name recognition, which goes a long way in this space. I mean, my husband has one of the Garmins, and that does get pretty good battery life. I think it's the Forerunner, I think, that he has. And he gets it at least a month, I think, on it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, I may be wrong. I know it's a lot better than an Apple Watch because he was like, I cannot do, I just don't, the fact that I have to charge it every day, no. So he went with this. Oh, no, 10 days, sorry. So over a week, that was it. It was like he needed it to be over a week. So he can just take it off on the weekend, and he doesn't really need it on the weekend. But 30 days is like, you almost, well, in a way, it would be hard to kind of get into the routine.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
But still,
charging.
I love the idea of I don't want to charge everything in my life. But unfortunately, that is kind of our future, I think. So, and it just looks great. Like the Garmin that my husband has looks good on him, but all the Garmins are really chunky. I think there's one that's a little streamlined, but they're just a bit chunky for me. I really like the look of these. I think they're much sleeker. They're still a bit more on the sort of unisex masculine side, I would say, rather than necessarily feminine. But I guess you could sort of swap that out with maybe some band options, which is what the Apple Watch does nicely. Like I don't have it on now, but I have the Milanese loop, which I just love on my Apple Watch. So it's interesting that they're asking for sort of ideas for the design and the colors, because I'm like, I don't know, it's weird how fashion has kind of shifted from what people kind of being told what's cool, right, to more of a kind of, that excellent scene in The Devil Wears Prada. I'm so excited for the second movie that's coming out soon. But the excellent scene in The Devil Wears Prada, where she talks about how color has been kind of, comes down. It
trickles down,
from the runways. But I like this more sort of democratic way of choosing how devices look. But it's hard to please everyone. That's the problem. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they end up with from that.
Design by committee is, of course, a sort of a joke in and of itself. I do think that it's part of the ethos of this company in particular, given that it was a Kickstarter project in the first place, which is as much of a grassroots sort of supporter system as could be, to now where when we had Eric on the show, he talked about the main reason that he wanted to do this was because he has been wearing the original design for years at this point. And he basically just had sort of, not actually, but a safe with several of them in there. And as they kind of died or whatever happened, and he would switch out.
Get a new one.
And he's like, well, I've been running out and I really want to bring it back. And so when Google open sourced made that system available again, I said, now's my chance. But hearing then the excitement from the community to bring it back in this way, I think is really cool. I have my Pebble still, and every once in a while I'll go on, because iFixit has been great in providing, in offering for sale replacement batteries for the Pebble. And so being able to keep it going that way. The original smartwatch, I remember just being so enamored of it and getting it and having it on my wrist for, as I said, days. And that was a difference to now where, I've got, my nightstand has a place for my Apple Watch, a place for my phone, a place for my AirPods. So it's not hard for me to do that.
I keep forgetting to put mine back on in the morning, and that's why I don't have it on now. And it's like, I want a watch that I don't have to wear. And I know where it is, but I took it off in the evening when I was watching TV, and I put it on the counter rather than on my bedside table where I have the charger. And it's like that. There's just too many things to charge in my life. Yes. That's very true. But
I'm looking around at all the different things I've got plugged in right now. But I think that multi-day battery life is very handy. As an Aura ring wearer, though, I do agree with that idea of, while it's good, it also is a difference in behavior. And so I find myself looking down at my ring, not seeing any green lights and realizing, oh, right, 2 days ago, I got that notification telling me I needed to charge it. And I just sometimes forget because it's not a thing that I'm regularly doing. Whereas for me, at this point, I feel it if I'm not wearing my Apple Watch, because every night I take it off, I put it on the charger. Every morning, it is part of me. Literally, like standing up out of bed is, I put my watch on, I grab my phone. So it's just built in. Whereas something that once a month is a little less. I don't know that I would be as good about it, but I can't, I can't say for sure. Regardless, really exciting stuff. They're working on it, of course. There's the pre-order that's going on right now, and we've got time until it is fully available, but you can still get in on the pre-order $225 price point. So if that is of interest to you, you can head over to the site. We'll, of course, include a link in the show notes to check it out, but repebble.com, repebble.com, which has all of the information about it.
If he's listening, rose gold. Let's have a rose gold one, please.
Rose gold would be good. It'd be very good.
I want some goldy in there, or even just gold.
Yeah. Even just a rose gold, very
Rose
good.
gold.
Jennifer Pattison, Tuohy, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. If people would like to check out the work you're doing and listen to the work you're doing, where should they go to do so?
Everything's at theverge.com. And as Mikah mentioned at the top of the show, I mentioned a while back, I was guest hosting a couple of Vergecast podcast episodes this month. So those are going live. One went live on Tuesday and the next one is next Tuesday. So you can head to the link there and download the episode or go to your podcast player of choice or YouTube to see a video. I'd love any feedback. It was a lot of fun. I don't know how you do this all the time, Mikah. But yeah, it was, it's great fun. And I love being on here too. So hopefully, actually I will be on Twit this weekend too. So
wonderful.
You guys get double dose of Jen.
Well, Jen, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we'll see you on Sunday.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Alrighty, we're going to take a quick break before we come back. If you've ever received one of those messages telling you that you need to pay your toll, well, your hero is on the phone very soon. Before we get to that interview, though, let's take a quick break so I can tell you about CashFly, bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly, literally, figuratively, and everywhere in between. For more than 20 years, CashFly has held a track record for high-performing, ultra-reliable content delivery, serving more than 5,000 companies in more than 80 countries. And at Twit, we have been using CashFly for more than a decade now. We love the lag-free video loading, the hyperfast downloads, I'm sure you love those too, and friction-free site interactions. And CashFly's proof is in the petabytes. Events are going to stream smoothly for millions of concurrent users worldwide. Online games will start 70% faster, scale instantly, and play without lag. Software downloads flawlessly during releases, patches, and updates. HD video plays on demand with ultra-fast sub-second start on every device. And podcasts reach global audiences in record speed at any scale. CashFly delivers rich media content up to 158% faster than other major CDNs and allows you to shield your site content in the cloud, ensuring a 100% cache hit ratio. And with CashFly's elite managed packages, you will get the VIP treatment. CashFly is like gaining an extension of your team. When your entire business model depends on delivering massive amounts of content, you can't afford to go it alone. You can count on personalized help anytime from a tenured expert who gets it. Engineer to engineer 24/7. So learn how you can get your first month free at cashfly.com/twit. That's CACHEFLY.com/twit. And we thank CashFly for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, we are back from the break. And as I said, there goes my hero. If you have received one of those SMS messages, or like me, you received from a family member a screenshot saying, is this real or is this a scam? Should I give them my money? I didn't think I had tolls. Well, someone is here to tell us all about what in the world is going on and tell us how, they worked to defeat, and we hope, this issue. Harrison Sand, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Really glad to get to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love it if we could kick off by having you kind of walk us through what made this particular phishing campaign stand out from the typical smishing. By the way, that was a new term for me, smishing attacks that you encounter, and what technical approach you took to start investigating what we'll learn is the Magic Cat platform.
Of course. So, I mean, to start off, most of our research took place, I would say, about a year and a half ago, and seemingly everybody on the planet was getting these text messages, right? Like either, you have to pay a toll like Easy Pass or something, or you have a package stuck at the post office. So I'm based out of Norway. We were getting those text messages in Norwegian. You look online, have relatives in the US. Everyone's getting text messages in every country. And my colleague, Arlen, and myself, we were sitting there and we're like, not too much. We were Googling around, like, these people have to be making money. Like, it has to cost something to be sending out a text message to the whole planet. So like, they have to be making money. There's no information about these people. Who are they? So we kind of took the advice that most people give not to do, and we clicked on the link and started poking around to see what was going on.
So you clicked it. You followed the path, the one that many of us attempt to avoid, and started digging into what you came to discover was kind of this platform, this software, to discover that there were protections in place, right? Several anti-forensics features designed to hide the operation from people like you, from security researchers. Can you tell us about that experience and some of the protective measures that were in place that you had to workarounds to actually access the phishing platform?
For sure. So normally, my colleague and I, we work, among other things, we do penetration testing. And when you look at web applications like this was, this is just a website basically, and use a piece of software called man-in-the-middle proxy, right? So it kind of sits in between the browser, either your phone or Chrome or whatever, and the backend server, and you kind of watch that data going back and forth. And when we tried to, that's the first step you normally take. When we tried to load it up on our computer to see that traffic going back and forth, it didn't, like, basically the website said, sorry, we're not running, nothing's going on. So what we realized was that, they're starting to put some protections in place, and we were trying to think, why is this the case? What are they doing? It wasn't, there were a few, without getting too technical, they were checking a few things that a phone would send differently than your desktop computer, and they were also checking what we believe was the IP address that you were coming from. Are you coming from a cell phone network? Are you coming from a Wi-Fi network? Because you're sending text messages. A lot of your victims are probably going to be on cell phones. But we also think it was for researchers to slow us down. But also imagine you submit, you take a screenshot and you submit it to whoever, you start try and report this as a phishing link. It's just going to be that one extra step to slow down the process. If the person on the other end getting that report just clicks on the link and nothing shows up, are they really going to spend the time to like dig down and say like, oh yeah, this is a phishing link? Or are they just going to pass it off and say like, okay, yeah, maybe it was a false positive. I don't know. Right.
Yeah. So that makes sense. I imagine that part of the aspect of this system is you send out a bajillion messages because some of them are going to come back and are going to be profitable, as opposed to kind of more targeted, right?
Targeted exactly. Instances of phishing. Just send everything out and hope you get a few back. Exactly.
Now, you did end up gaining access, is my understanding, to a Telegram group that revealed an entire ecosystem around this being an actual phishing-as-a-service operation. Racks. Tell us about that. Like, what surprised you most about the scale and sophistication of what these operators are running?
I mean, I would say initially what surprised me, it just that the group was open and out there for anybody to find. If you just knew at the time when we looked, if you just knew where to look, it was just there. And, we just joined this Telegram group. After you knew the name of this phishing platform, you could just search for it, go in. And it was very open. It was very professionalized. There were people showing off their fancy cars that they bought, going out and partying.
Wow.
It was, racks of phone. They were, like you mentioned, just like, because you need quite a bit of infrastructure to send out a message to everybody out on the planet. And, so you just have like hundreds and hundreds of phones on racks running automated software, just sending text messages to everybody.
That the fact that they're showing their vehicles and just like, look what I was able to do. That is something else.
But it's like advertising in a way, right? So like if you,
fair.
It's like, hey, look at all this stuff I got. You should, there's a few different platforms and they're kind of competing for different, scammers, I guess, to use their platform. And if you say, hey, I got this cool stuff, maybe you'll be more likely to use them.
Holy cow. I will not name specific companies because I don't want them to come after me, but I can think of a few cosmetics companies that have pink cars that their people can get if they get high enough up into the system. And now I'm thinking about sort of the comparisons between the two. You're showing off what you're able to get, and that draws more people in for sure. Oh, I want that fleece. So you did manage to join a sort of admin room where you were able, can you tell us about this sort of real-time data stream? And then tell us about that moment of getting into this room and seeing this stuff flow in and the scope of how many people were being actively phished.
Absolutely. So simplifying a bit things, but more or less, basically, you have a few servers that are kind of run by the admins of this group, and then all the scammers kind of have their own phishing servers. So you have, let's say hundreds, maybe 1,000 individual scamming servers, a few master servers, you could say. And then what we found out when we started looking at that data going back and forth using this man-in-the-middle proxy I mentioned earlier, you could see that as you typed in data as if you were a victim, it was kind of getting sent to this chat room, and all of the data you were sending was getting sent to this like admin chat room. And it was basically kind of sitting right in front of us, and we're like, well, what happens if we just like join the admin chat room? So we're not just sending messages to there, but what if we just join it to see what's going on? And this was just on one server of probably 100, hundreds or 1,000. And there was just a stream of victim data coming down real time, right? So like every time, character for character, as you're typing in, your credit card number or your address, you just see it flying by in this admin chat room. And that was shocking to see that, like, I could see real time hundreds of people getting scammed, and just knowing that like this is just one out of hundreds, right? So there's probably just the scale of this was just massive.
Wow. And the platform, as you talk about, appears to be kind of run like enterprise software, licensing, updates, even customer support. What was that like? Who's buying these phishing kits, of course, and was that a surprise to you that it's run like enterprise software, or is that kind of what's to be expected at this point?
I mean, the software was run honestly better than some enterprise software I've used.
Wow.
It was. I know that this isn't the only piece of software that's come to this level of sophistication in terms of support and updates and so on. But it was very well maintained, very easy to use. The people, so you had like a few key players in this Telegram group, and you could kind of reach out to them, and they would facilitate, getting a license. So you'd send some cryptocurrency, you'd buy a license for a week or a month at a time. You get a license key. And and then you download the software. It was just a one-line installation, way easier than probably setting up tons of software out there. A lot of the people we saw in the group, you mentioned what types of people. It was hundreds, so I can't say, but I speak for all. But it seemed like a lot of opportunists, right? So like 20 to 30-year-olds, just like, hey, I'm online, like I'll make a quick buck. If I'm on the other side of the world, maybe. I'll probably never get caught. So it's just my impression is it's mainly opportunists.
It just, for me, it just blows my mind because I think about it seems different from sort of the classic pirating of some. I'm thinking of like. You want to install Microsoft Office on your machine, and back in the day, there were a few places to get the software keys, right? But this is in theory, in this way, it's like you have to rely on, what was it, the thieves code, like the honor among thieves situation, where everybody is a bad actor here, and you potentially could be faced with, what if that that company that you're getting this from decides to turn the tables on you and has your, it just, anyway, the idea of even going to this platform and getting a license key and going through that process, the level of, in my mind, not thinking things through that has to be involved with that is wild.
Yeah,
but
go ahead. Yeah, the risk assessment's not necessarily a risk I would take, right? You're giving all of this information to a guy who's also a criminal. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Now, this is where I think it's starting to become cinematic. Is you, Mnemonic started to track down the identity of the person behind this platform. Can you tell us about like what that process involved to be able to uncover a real person's identity of whom you believe was responsible for the creation of Magic Cat?
Sure. So, as part of our investigation, we were, digging as deep as we could into this, centralized infrastructure to see like any kind of clues as to who these people were. Eventually, we came across an IP address, and we believed that this IP address was probably associated with one of these developers. We looked, again, simplifying a bit, but basically we looked to see what has this IP address been used for previously. And we found that about a year prior to our research, the IP was used, it was linked to a GitHub account. And this GitHub account didn't really seem super related to Magic Cat. It was like out in the open, some like benign, innocent repositories in there. But eventually we found the email and we kept just going down the rabbit hole. And eventually we were like, this kind of feels like it might be the guy. We actually sent him an email just asking about one of the repositories that were open in the public. And was like, hey, we got a question about one of your repos. Maybe you could help us like debug something. And we had a link in there, and the link recorded the IP address when he clicked it. And that actually pointed back to the same IP that we knew was getting used to log in to the back-end infrastructure. So it was like, okay, like this is probably the guy. And then we kind of just did a bunch of OSINT on that email, and we worked with the Norwegian state media, and they were able to kind of work with their sources and eventually get the identity and a photo of the guy.
Wow. So you used, is it often that you end up using some of the same techniques that these phishing scams use themselves to sort of track down and get at these people? The idea that someone who's so involved with this would click, in theory, unprotected on a URL, knowing sort of what's possible in terms of that also blows my mind. Do you find that it ends up being a situation where somebody's feeling invulnerable, or is it just takes one slip up? Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, how would you not be going through every protection possible to not let something like that happen?
Yeah. So, and there's definitely a bit of irony here, right? So, but I think, because we did sit and think about this a lot, but it's like, imagine you've been running this infrastructure for a long time. All you have to do is slip up once. And remember, we sent that email. We didn't send, because he has two identities. He has his like Telegram identity, where he's the developer behind the software, and he's doing all his illegal stuff, right? And then he has this, presumably, this open identity where he's not doing anything illegal. So like, so if you send a link to that, right? So if you send that, link to his open, good guy role, and then, maybe you're a bit more, your guard's not as up, when you click on that.
It's almost a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation where, I guess, if you've got these two personas that you're playing and this comes through the legitimate means, you're sort of in that mindset. That makes sense. Very, very cool stuff. Of course, for everyone listening out there, you got to go read the full piece because there's so much juicy detail. And as I said, I wanted to turn it into a movie right then and there. look, we know that this operation, as you saw, has likely hundreds of thousands of victims globally. I was just reading about how Magic Cat might be out the door, but then there's a new thing that's popped up in its place, continues to evolve. Do you have any thoughts on what needs to happen from financial institutions, telecom companies, law enforcement to combat these actual phishing-as-a-service operations?
Sure. I mean, the numbers, so to real quick to point on the numbers. So when we did our research, hundreds of thousands of victims, that's just what we were only able to see a small portion. I would imagine it's millions out there. But to speak on your second point, like, I think in a way, this is just my personal opinion, but I think in a way, the reason this type of fraud has been able to proliferate is that, you have the responsibility is kind of spread between so many different areas. You have so what they're doing is, you receive a text message or an iMessage. Okay. And then that's your phone company, or maybe, Apple, if it's an iMessage, for example. So a bit of responsibility there for filtering out the messages. And then you have, banks, what are they doing for fraud detection? And if you read, the piece that goes a bit deeper, you'll see that, a lot of the ways that they're able to monetize these cards is by, onboarding them into a mobile wallet like Apple Pay or Google Pay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then that's another thing, is maybe there's some kind of fraud metric saying that, like, hey, I have, 100 Apple Pay cards on my iPhone. Maybe this iPhone is a bit suspicious. Could Apple pass that information on to the banks and use that as some kind of metric? And then of course law enforcement. I'm not going to. I think it's a bit of everybody. So there's a lot we could do as a society, I think.
Then I think the final question I'll ask you: what advice do you have for us, the people who are out there who get, these messages? What would we add to our toolkit of protecting ourselves from these phishing schemes? And maybe more importantly, the people listening to this probably can avoid a lot of it. What do we tell our family members who come to us for the tech questions about how to avoid this?
Yeah. So I know I'm not the first person to say this by any means. Whenever you get a text message, just if it has a link in it, 9 times out of 10, you don't need to click it. If it's from your bank, for example, if you're unsure, go to the website directly. Open up your laptop, type in the URL, call your bank, with the phone number, not the phone number in the text message, but the phone number to be the phone number for your bank, right? But I think actually, there's what we can do individually is actually quite small. I think the actual solution to this, it lies on, big tech and phone companies and law enforcement. It's hard for us individuals to make a huge change.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us, to tell us all about this, and to you and the researchers who worked on this specifically. This is something that, as I mentioned at the start of the interview, screenshots that I get regularly from family members asking me, do you think this is, what is it? It's a horrible, horrible thing that takes advantage of a lot of people. And so the fact that there are people out there like you who are actively tracking this down and putting as much of a stop to it as possible is fantastic. We know that folks can head to the link we'll have in the show notes to check out this work. Is there anywhere else you would suggest people go to keep up to date with the work that you're doing as a security researcher?
I would say, the link, I'm sure you could find it based on the links you guys are going to put down there. I have Mnemonic, we have a blog. I'm sure if there's any updates, we're going to put it out there. LinkedIn, the Norwegian State Media, they have a few articles that have been in English. If not, Google Translate does a really good job. I'd recommend, you could check them out. And there's also links if you not too hard to find.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All righty, folks. We have one more story, sort of a truly another late-breaking story here. But before we get there, I want to remind you about Club Twit. at twit.tv/clubtwit. When you head to twit.tv/clubtwit and join our club, $10 a month, $120 a year, you gain access to some pretty awesome stuff. First and foremost, the main attraction, ad-free versions of all of our shows. It's just the contents and none of the ads, and you get your own personalized feeds. It's kind of cool. When you subscribe to these personalized feeds, it actually has your name right there in the title of the feed. That will be an ad-free version of, again, every single one of our shows. You also gain access to our Twit Plus feeds that include behind the scenes, before the show, after the show. We also have a feed for our news events now that we're doing those in the club, and access. And we've got the Made by Google event coming up very soon. So watching that in the club and gaining access to that afterward will be there. And then our club Twit only shows like Mikah's Crafting Corner, upcoming show that I will be doing where I'm running an adventure, a D&D adventure. So if you like D&D or other tabletop role-playing games, now's the time to join the club to get to check that out. I had a poll out and it's overwhelmingly decided. And so I will be working on that soon, and I'll have more information about that soon. And a couple other things that I'm working on. All of that is available in the club, and access lastly to the Club Twit Discord, a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also those of us here at Twit. So if you would like to be part of the club, we'd love to have you. It's also nice to get that warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that you are helping make what we do here possible. Plus, did I mention you start with a 2-week free trial? Yeah. So go ahead, join the club, check it out. I think you'll end up staying. You're going to love it. And we thank you for your support. All righty, folks. Let's head back to the show with our final story. Apple, again, late breaking, is bringing blood oxygen monitoring back to newer Apple Watch models in the US through a clever workaround that sidesteps an ongoing patent dispute with medical device maker Masimo. Starting today, as we record this show on Thursday, August 14th, the company is rolling out iOS 18.6.1 and watchOS 11.6.1. These updates will enable a redesigned version of the feature for Apple Watch Series 9, Series 10, and Ultra 2 units sold after the import ban took effect. The twist? Instead of calculating blood oxygen levels directly on the watch, the data will now be processed on the paired iPhone, allowing Apple to circumvent the ITC, the International Trade Commission's import restrictions, while still delivering health monitoring capabilities to users. I have to tell you, I'm really excited about this because just the other day, I wanted to use the blood oxygen sensor on my Apple Watch, and I remembered, oh, right, I've got the Ultra 2. So, not possible. How does the new system work? Well, the blood oxygen feature represents a, kind of a big change in terms of how it's set up for the purpose of being able to go around this ban. Rather than performing the measurements and calculations on the Apple Watch itself, what happens is sensor data from the blood oxygen app on the watch gets transmitted over to the iPhone. So with that, it does mean that you're not going to be able to view the readings directly on your wrist. You will have to go into the health app on the iPhone, and in the respiratory section, that is where your readings will be. It does only affect specific models because if it was before the ban, then it doesn't apply. So Apple Watch Series 9, Series 10, Ultra 2 units sold in the US after January 17th of 2024. That's when the ban took effect. And you can identify if you have an affected model by checking if your serial number ends with LW/A. Or again, just go by the model number and you most likely fall within that. So what was the whole issue here? Well, Masimo and Apple sort of entered into this multi-year dispute. It dates back to 2020 when Masimo, which does make medical-grade pulse oximeters, accused Apple of stealing trade secrets. The company filed a separate case with the ITC in 2021. So that was after the 2020 conflict, alleging patent infringement, which led to an import ban in December of 2023. We talked about that on the show as well. Apple did not take this lying down. In fact, it worked regularly to countersue Masimo, claiming that these smartwatches are claiming that Masimo's smartwatches are Apple Watch clones. And then Apple filed a massive 916-page appeal of the ITC ban, which remains ongoing. Now, here's the interesting aspect. It's all about timing, because Masimo's patents are actually set to expire in 2028. So it's somewhat likely that this workaround will only be needed for another 3 years before those patents expire. Of course, if you're a new purchaser, if you're buying an Apple Watch Series 9, 10, or Ultra 2 in the US right now, you will get this redesigned feature after updating. If you're an existing owner like myself, and you got your watch before January 17th, then it's still going to work the same way that it worked before, meaning that it will read right there on your wrist, not after the fact on the iPhone. International users, it doesn't apply to you because this is just a US issue. The update was enabled by what Apple describes as, quote, a recent US customs ruling. So it seems that the company did successfully argue that this iPhone-based processing method doesn't violate the import ban. So seems to have taken it to the authorities and said, check it out, look what we can do here. Is this okay? Can we get the thumbs up? Well, it seems that they did. Now, this, of course, is not the one health tracking feature that the Apple Watch has. It has a bunch of different health monitoring capabilities. Irregular rhythm for your heart, notifications about that, ECG functionality, sleep apnea notifications, fall detection, sleep tracking in general, wrist temperature sensing, and the new Vitals app, which includes lots of different information. So only the Blood Oyxgen sensor and system was impacted, but it seems like what Apple didn't want was for the Apple Watch to be seen as this device that can do all of these things, but it doesn't do Blood Oyxgen. So now there's this workaround. What is fascinating is, of course, the question of whether or not this workaround will set precedent for future disputes. If the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, or in this case, the letter of the ban versus the spirit of the ban, will come into play more in the future. That is, of course, one of those we'll have to wait and see. I think the fact that I will have Blood Oyxgen sensing again on the watch is, well, not on the watch, via the iPhone is cool, and I'm happy to have that back. Because for me, as an Apple Watch user, that's more important to me than this legal dispute between two companies. But of course, from the perspective of Masimo, I'm sure this is a frustration. And from the perspective of anyone who is, heavily invested in the idea that one can create a thing, get a patent for said thing, and have it protected to a certain extent, of course, is also at risk here in a way. But it also comes down to the fact that Apple has figured out a way to not do the very specific thing that the patent set forth, and therefore is able to go forth with this new methodology. One aspect of this that sticks out to me, though, is the idea that the measurement and calculation is happening on the iPhone according to sort of the language that is included, when surely it requires the sensors that are on the Apple Watch itself. So part of this feels like a clever use of language, because is it a matter of the phone sort of pairing in the moment with the Apple Watch, or connecting in the moment with the Apple Watch and having that raw data streamed over? And so because that raw data is streamed over, then technically that means that the iPhone is performing the measurement, versus before where it would use the LED, the lights that are built in the sensors themselves, because it's not as if you're taking the iPhone and putting it on your wrist and using the sensors that are there to do the blood oxygen calculation. It is going to require the sensor suite on the back of the Apple Watch to actually pull that data. So it all feels like a little bit of language change there, just to very narrowly define the scope and therefore get past this ban. So I will be checking this out as soon as I can to see how it's working, and we'll see how Masimo responds, if it can, to kind of combat what has come forth. In any case, this is the end of this episode of Tech News Weekly. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. Of course, you can head to twit.tv/TNW. If you are not currently subscribed to the show, that's where you go to subscribe to the show in audio and video formats. Again, I talked about Club Twit during the show, but head to twit.tv/ClubTwit to check it out. If you'd like to follow me online, I'm at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, where you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. Be sure to check out my shows that publish later today. Hands on Apple and iOS today. Hands on Tech publishes every Sunday. Thanks for being here this week. Thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you again next week for another episode of Tech News Weekly. Bye-bye.
From Silicon Valley boardrooms to tomorrow's AI breakthroughs, if you need to keep up to date with tech, you need Twit.tv. At Twit, we're tech experts who understand what's happening and can keep you in the loop. And we do it in a thoughtful, informed, and fun way. Start your Sundays with This Week in Tech, a roundtable of tech journalists and people in the know with a rundown of the week's most important tech news. But that's not all. All week long, you can stay ahead of security threats with Steve Gibson and Security Now. Keep up on all things Apple with Mac Break Weekly. Listen to the most informed Microsoft experts in the world with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell on Windows Weekly. Our flagship shows feature tech's most respected voices, giving you the insight you need to understand and benefit from the changing world of technology. We give you analysis you won't find anywhere else, so you can make smarter business decisions and take advantage of the technologies transforming your world. Whether you're a CEO, IT professional, or simply passionate about technology, Twit's network of shows gives you the edge you need in today's digital landscape. Don't miss a minute. Subscribe to twit.tv today.